Recently, I asked you lovely people what you would like my next video to be. You voted, so today I'm going to be showing you how to create the neon effect. Hello my friends and welcome back to another video. Rob here from Button Press Graphics, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create this neon effect. So without further ado, let's get started. Now when it comes to neons, you need to know a few things before you get started. It's very easy to create neons, but the background will matter. So if you put bright lights on top of a white background, they are not going to be seen as well. But if you put them on a dark background, like this one for example, then they are going to have a much more impactful effect. Today I'm going to use a font, and I'm going to use this to show you exactly how it can work. But this is not something that you have to do. As you saw with the hexagons, you can use any shape that you want. If you are going to use a hexagon or any other shape like this, just be aware that when you add a stroke and you take away the fill, you can thicken this line up using the fill and stroke menu, which you can find right here. Once you are in the fill and stroke menu, you can go to your stroke style tab and you can increase the thickness and then round the join and round the cap, which are these two central icons here. However, this is still showing as a stroke, and because you will need to use a dynamic offset, if you try to use the dynamic offset now, it wouldn't work. So what you need to do is go to path, stroke to path. This will turn the stroke into an object rather than a stroke, as signified by down in the bottom left corner. If I undo, as you can see, it is a stroke. By coming up to the path, stroke to path, you are changing it to a fill, which means that you could simply add a stroke onto the outside of this object now. But as for right now, I am going to use fonts. So in order to use the fonts, I'm just going to come over to my text tool on the left hand side right here, and then click on the canvas to start typing. And I'm just going to write the word neon, like so. Now using my select tool, I'm just going to increase the size so it's very easy to see. And I am going to open up my font editor or my text editor, which can be found right here on the top toolbar. Now there are a lot of fonts out there that you can download and use. I'm going to leave a link in the description for a couple of the ones that I've been playing around with. One of which being this one here, Beyond. And as you can see, it gives the nice neon effect to all the letters. There is also another one that I found called Neanderthal. Now Neanderthal is also a very good font, but if I was to apply this one, as you can see with certain aspects of this font, you will have it overlapping like this. So you would have to tweak it in order to get it to look exactly how you would like it. You can do this by going object to path to turn it into its individual paths, and then making sure you use the commands to cut off parts that you don't want. Now in order to keep the video as short as possible today, I'm just going to be using the Beyond font. And please be aware that if you do install a different font that you want to use within your project, you will need to restart Inkscape if Inkscape is already open after you install the font. Once you have got the font that you want and you've got all the wording that you want, all the shapes, then the only thing you need to do is make sure you've got a sufficient background to set it on. So for me, I'm going to click and just move this out of the way for now. And now I am going to get my squares and rectangles tool, which can be found right here. And I'm going to create a square going from one corner of my canvas to the opposite side. I'm going to make sure that that's black. And now I'm going to open up my fill and stroke menu again and make sure the opacity is completely full. Now, the best thing that I have found when it comes to having a dark background is making sure that you have some kind of color to go with it. So for this example, I'm going to go to my fill menu, and now I am going to add a radial gradient with this button right here. When you do, you will get something that looks a little bit like this. Now I want the color to be in the middle. Now I'm just going to go with my branding colors. So I'm going to have a deep dark blue in the center. And then I'm going to come down to this outside edge, which is completely transparent, which is why you cannot see a color. But we're going to turn up the alpha channel all the way up to 100. And now, as you can see, it is completely dark. And I think that I'm going to leave it exactly like that. However, before we finish off with the background, I am going to extend this by holding Control and just clicking and dragging it over to the right. And then extend the top one, again holding Control, just slightly, so I can keep the top and the bottom edges darker than the rest. And now we have it like that. I am fairly happy with that. Now if you want to add a pattern on top of your background, like I did in this one, for example, as you can see, there is a hexagon pattern behind all the hexagons that I made. Then all you need to do is right click, duplicate, and then go to this button right here that says pattern. Once you select it, you will get something that looks a bit like this. Now this is the one that I used last time, and then you can play around with the color by selecting it here, and it will bring open this menu. And if I use this color picker, you can get something that looks a bit like that. And then you can play around with the brightness until you get the look that you're looking for. Something like that will be good for me. And that is your background completely done. Now we are going to go back using our select tool to the neon text. I'm going to bring that down into the middle of the canvas, and I'm going to raise it to the top with this button right here. And now we have our neon sign. However, it doesn't look very, well, neon. In order to get the look that we're looking for, we are going to need to have this text 3 times, but the top one should be white. So we come down here, select white, and then we are going to go to path, object to path. Now it is no longer a text object, it is an actual object that we can use the dynamic offset on. And that is exactly what we're going to need. Now with the neon text still selected, or whatever shape you're working with, turn the opacity down to 50% using your fill and stroke menu on this slider at the bottom. This enables us to see just how much we are increasing the shape width by when we use the dynamic offset. With that done, I'm going to right click again, duplicate, and then I'm going to go to Path, Dynamic Offset. Now it doesn't look like much has changed, but if we use our nodes tool, we will get this little diamond here. Now I've already gone over the dynamic offset in a previous video, but for now all you have to do is click and drag to increase the size of the object that you're wanting to put the dynamic offset on. Now it's also worth mentioning, if you have snapping turned on, this can get in the way for this part. So whenever you use the dynamic offset, make sure that you turn snapping off. Snapping can be found in the top right corner right here. Now with it turned off, if I click and drag on that diamond, as you can see, we get it increasing and decreasing until we get the shape that we want. Now for me, that is around perfect. I want to get it so these two are just about to touch. And now I'm going to go to Path, Object to Path. Now it is its own separate shape. Now instead of duplicating, we are going to come back to Path and we're going to go to Linked Offset. What linked offset is going to do is exactly the same as the dynamic offset. However, it is going to leave a copy that we start with. So as you increase, as you can see, the original copy is still there that we already increased, but now it's created another one. And now that we have the size that we want, I'm just going to go to Path, Object to Path. So now we have 3 different sized text. Even though they are all objects, they are exactly what we need. And that's how it should look. Now when it comes to neons, we're going to need to have the whitest part at the top, and we're going to have the most saturated colors at the bottom. Now the trade-off for this is the most saturated the color is, the more the blur should be. So now that I have this object selected, I am going to drop this to the bottom like so, and you will see it disappear. Now there is one background shape and one patterned shape layered on top. So I'm going to raise this 2 steps. Now with this middle shape, the middle section of the letters, I am going to drop that 1 place, and this should allow you to select the top shape, which is the whitest one, just like that. Now if I zoom in onto the end of this letter here, it will make it easier for me to select between all 3. Now you need to choose the color of your neons. Now because this is a blue background, I'm going to use a contrasting color. I'm going to use something like the fuchsia or a deep pink. Something like this. Now because this is the topmost piece, this has got to be the least saturated. So I'm going to put that down to around 30. Then working my way down, I can select this piece, use this dropper tool here, or I can simply press D on the keyboard, and then selecting this one, we can pick exactly the same color. However, this time we can turn up the saturation to around 60. And now we can pick the bottom with our select tool, and we can also make that full 100% saturation. So it looks like that. Now with all the colors chosen, with the least saturated being at the top and the most saturated being at the bottom, we can hold shift, select all three and turn the opacity all the way back up. And already you can see the difference it has made. Now I'm going to select off the canvas to deselect everything, and I'm going to just take the topmost piece, the one that's the least saturated. I'm going to right click, duplicate, and then I'm going to move that off until we need it later. That is just going to cause a shadow behind the neon sign. So for now, we are going to use these three pieces and we are going to gradually blur them the further down we go. So for the topmost piece, the one that's the least saturated, I'm going to use a blur of around 5. Like so. Then I'm going to zoom in so we can see better. And as you can see, you've got this jaggedness here, but do not worry about that. We're going to increase the blur on this one to 10. And then we're going to take the bottom piece and we're going to increase the blur on that to around 15. And now, as you can see, it looks a whole lot more neon. Now at this point, this is where you could go through and you could increase or decrease the amount of saturation that you've got, change the colors and make sure that you have it looking as perfect as you want it to look. Once you are happy, you can then go back to the text that you duplicated earlier, turn this completely black. Then using shift, you can select the other text, which is at the top or the least saturated text. And then using your align and distribute menu, which you can find right here, with last selected chosen from the drop down, you can make sure that you center it on the vertical and horizontal axes. So it looks something like this. Now again, I'm going to deselect everything by selecting off the canvas. And now I just want the black piece. So with that selected, I am now going to use the simple arrow keys on the keyboard. And I'm going to just shift it off to one side. And then downwards as well. Now what I'm really looking for here is I'm using the O as a reference. I want this part of the O to be seen, but the rest to be layered behind. And now I've got it in a position that I'm happy with, I can drop it to the bottom and then raise it 2 steps. So it looks like this. Now with that done, I can go back to my fill and stroke menu and I can turn the blur up on this. And there you go, my friends. As I said, a very simple way of creating the neon effect. Did you know that you can become a member of the Button Press Graphics YouTube channel? Well, now you do. You will get a lot of added benefits and you will directly support the channel, enabling me to make much better content in the future. Also, you can send in your artwork into the creative corner, This is a regular section where I will showcase your work in a future video. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell, and I will see you next time.